psychological or emotional abuse escalates. It starts out with jokes and insults, kind of the put-down jokes, the put-down stories that cast the other person in a bad light. I had a friend who talked about a social event that he was at. He's a pastor, and he was at a social event, and he was with a group of men who were talking, and this man was talking about his airhead wife. Now, the ladies do the same thing and talk about their airhead husbands from time to time. Don't do that. Don't do that, either one of you, male or female. Don't put your spouse down in the front of other people. But this man was doing that, and he was talking about his wife. She'd made, I think, a $10 error in the checking book, and he talked about how foolish that was, and they were great mistakes. And my friend, who was the pastor, kind of looked at this man, and he knew that this man had lost thousands in business deals. And yet he's picking on his wife, joking about his wife, making a mockery of his wife over a $10 checkbook error. Silent treatment. It can be used as a device to abuse. I had someone in the first church I served as pastor that had some severe problems. And in talking about them, we went back to his youth and the way that his relationship actually with his mother. And his mother would give him the silent treatment. And he would know, I did something wrong. And he would come to his mother and say, Mom, what did I do? And she would look at him and say, you know. And continue the silent treatment. And that could go on for days. And there was never any explanation of what was going on. This is a device to control. Yelling, name calling. That's kind of the base level. Then the spouse, and I'm going to speak primarily about the wife as the victim or the woman as the victim. We recognize that this can work the opposite way as well. There's a small percentage, I think it's like 5% of domestic violence cases where the man is the victim and the woman is the perpetrator. But the vast majority, it's the other way around. It's the man who is the manipulator and the woman who is the victim. And she becomes the target of repeated insults. Humiliation is used to break someone down emotionally and psychologically. And the threats of retaliation, you do this or else. And these kinds of things develop in a way that words don't have to be used. A look is often enough to send the message. This is what I want, and you better do it. You don't have to say it. You just look. And the woman knows that look, and she knows she's going to be in trouble if she doesn't do it immediately. But once I learned some of these things, I found I could discover it in other places. And just look at the relationships between husbands and wives and see how they act. And it's time to leave church, and the husband is eager to go. And he doesn't have to say, honey, let's go home. He just gives the look. And she's in the middle of a conversation, and she catches the eye, and, I'm done. And finishes up the conversation and is on her way. These are the things that we're talking about psychological and emotional abuse. In addition, there is a personal degradation as a person, a lover, a parent, and so forth. The man may question the mental health of the woman, suggest that she has a mental illness. I've known women who were put into the corner in that way and were convinced that they had some kind of defect, some kind of mental illness, so that their husband had to take that kind of control. The individual may demand constant attention, may be jealous even of the children. Don't want your spending time with the children. You spend your time with me. I'm the husband, or others. He may threaten to divorce or to leave. If you don't do what I want, then I could walk out, and then where would you be? He may tell her that I'm the only one who would ever put up with you. So if I walk out the door, you're on your own. You're alone. And nobody's going to come along and help you. Nobody's going to love you except me. That kind of abuse, over time, as it escalates, can lead to the woman losing. What did we talk about last night? Hope. That can lead to a woman losing hope. There's no place. He tells me I'm dumb. He tells me I'm not pretty. He tells me that there's nobody else that's going to love me. And I believe that. And so I'm pushed and pushed and pushed down, suppressed. I can't have my own opinions. I can't think for myself. He has to tell me what to do. I can't do anything for myself. What good am I? What worth am I? And it can lead to despair, loss of hope, and loss of hope can eventuate in suicide. It can eventuate in other things too. But this kind of abuse is sufficient to drive someone, to bring someone to the place of considering taking their own life. Physical abuse escalates. It starts with a pinch, maybe a squeeze on the arm, a slap, a shove, some pushing, some shaking, and then deny basic needs. It may lead to hitting, kicking, choking, and again, the individual is targeted. The woman is targeted. There may be bruises. And often the bruises will be in places where they don't show, at least not readily. Then it advances to using household items as weapons, restrain and hit. There may be abuse during pregnancy. You'll find lacerations or cuts, scrapes, broken bones, internal injuries. And that may escalate to the use of weapons, to the use of guns or knives, permanent injury, or homicide. Did you know that more than 30% of women who are homicide victims were killed by the person who said they loved her, by her intimate partner? Sexual abuse escalates. It builds. It's this pattern that we're talking about. It may involve minimizing sexual needs. I don't need you. And the woman feels unattractive, unwanted, unloved. It may be criticism of her sexuality. Or it may manifest itself in unwanted touching, in withholding, or demanding sex frequently. It could go either direction. Either none of it or I want it all the time. Remember, it's not about sex. It's not that the guy has a strong sexual need. It's about control. And he will fall into whichever pattern seems to provide the greatest control. Will lead to sexual insults, name-calling, shaming, and humiliation. It's manifested in incest, promiscuity. I have my wife, I have my girlfriends. We rolled out to one domestic violence scene where, as we talked with the woman, she had been beaten. She had bruises all over the place. And as we were interviewing her, talking with her, she was telling us what was going on. This guy brought his girlfriends home and had sex with them while his wife sat outside the bedroom door. It was his thing. It was his way of humiliating her, to have her watch or listen while he was doing what he was doing. And he maintained control over her. It may lead to forceful sex, It may lead to uncomfortable sex. It may lead to sex with a beating or sex after a beating. Weapons may be introduced. There may be sex with weapons and sex resulting in injury. And as the other escalations lead to some kind of violence, this form of escalation may lead to rape with homicide. I'm not saying it does in every case, but that's where it's headed, to rape with homicide. Social abuse escalates. Social abuse is the isolation of a woman from her social connections. It plays on the myths and the stereotypes about women. It uses privilege based on income, gender, race, immigration status, the ability to speak English, and so forth, to control. You need me because you're an immigrant and you don't know the culture, I know the culture, you have to depend on me. You can't depend on anybody else, you can't have other friends. You don't speak English very well, so you need to listen to me. I'll tell you everything you need to know. I'll do it. I'll lead you. I'll guide you. It degrades the culture. It may degrade the nationality, the education of the partner, the professional skill. You're not very smart, are you? You're just a dumb woman. Religion can be the focus of the target. And this form of abuse uses the legal system and religion and friends to justify it. The goal is to totally isolate the target, the woman, from her family, from her friends, from any support system that she may have, so that she is totally dependent on the abuser. And again, that kind of isolation, that kind of loneliness, if the only relationship we have is with somebody who is controlling you, manipulating you, treating you as his personal slave, that leads to loss of hope again, and can culminate in suicide. Some of our suicides are exactly due to that cause. Economic abuse. The husband or the boyfriend totally controls the income and spending. The woman has no funds of her own or no access to any funds. It's cut off. He may give her a couple of dollars to have in her purse or something, but she doesn't have the ability to go out and make decisions and spend money. It's interesting, in Proverbs 30, we've got the picture of the wife, the noble wife, and how she cares for her family and so forth. One of the things it says that she goes out and buys a field. And I find that interesting because it doesn't say that she goes out and looks at a field and then comes back to get her husband's permission to buy the field. Now, husbands and wives may work that out in a way that they do agree together. I hope my wife would not go out and buy real estate without me. But she makes all kinds of decisions without me. And she's able, she spends what she sees as appropriate, and I trust her. But in this kind of relationship, there's not that trust. The woman doesn't have access to any funds. She doesn't have her own money. She can't access the joint banking account. May not even be a joint banking account. And she's given just a small amount, maybe, to have in case of emergency. Or she's given a specific amount to do shopping for a specific reason. But there's no independence within that relationship. There's no ability to use her own mind, make her own decisions. She is dependent economically, totally
upon the man. He limits the victim's ability to improve her skills. You don't need to go to school. Why do you want to go? You want to go to junior college? Why do you want to go to junior college? That's just a waste of money. You don't need junior college. You got high school. That's good enough. You don't need anything more. You don't need any training, any job training. You're not going to advance in your job. They're not going to give you any kind of raises or any kind of promotions. Or maybe you don't even have a job. It's not that I do believe in wives being at home and caring for the kids and all that, but even in Proverbs, this woman has a home business and she has some other things that she does. This man doesn't want any of that. I want you dependent totally on me. I don't want you getting an education. If you get an education, you're going to think your own thoughts. I want you to think my thoughts. You've got to agree with my positions. I don't want you to take a higher paying job. I'm the breadwinner, and I have to be the one who brings in the money, and not you at all. It promotes what's called a traditional role of women. That's the defense. But a traditional role is not necessarily a biblical role. Somewhere in our history, these ideas became confused. They crossed paths. And people have the idea that a biblical model is the traditional model. It's all the same. And in the biblical model, again, when you look at Proverbs 30:31, you've got women really functioning quite differently than they do in some of these homes. The husband limits access to health care and things like that. If you don't want your abuse to be discovered, and so you don't want the wife going to a doctor, a primary care physician, or going to a clinic, or going anywhere unless it's absolutely necessary. He limits access to transportation. If he permits the use of the family vehicle, he may track the mileage or check the GPS and determine where she has gone. And again, that isolation leads to loneliness, hopelessness, and despair. By these limitations, by these restrictions, the man maintains control.